This episode of the podcast features Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, a revered master of the Bön tradition of Tibet. Rinpoche shares the distinctive qualities of Bön and clarifies some misconceptions. He tells us about his extensive training in India and many years of teaching in the West, including his ever-developing work in the field of dream and sleep yoga, in which he's folding more and more science to accompany traditional wisdom. In addition to his formal work, we learn about Rinpoche's passion for longevity science and tracking biomarkers, to things like playing golf with his son, bringing us to this very moment. I'm your host, Ivan Berkowitz. Greetings, Rinpoche. Thank you for joining us for this podcast interview. And in this interview, I'll be asking you questions about your life and your teachings. And the first thing I wanted to ask about is a little bit about the world of Bön, because it's somewhat mysterious and likely misunderstood in the West and in many Western Dharma communities. And I'd just like to ask you a little bit about your lineage and how that intersects with Buddhism, and what some of the distinctive qualities of Bön are that make it unique.
Mm-hmm. So, first of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor. So, as far as the Bön is concerned, Bön is the one way people say indigenous tradition of Tibet, but I don't know if it's originated in Tibet, so I'm not sure about it. You can call indigenous, but probably the oldest spiritual tradition in Tibet is Bön. It's originated from Central Asia, and in Tibet, it's the oldest spiritual tradition and the early part of the Tibetan tradition. So, as every tradition, spirituality have a different history. So, it's like a American version of the Native American history and Native American version of the Native American history. It's a similar to that. So according to the Bön tradition, it has a full enlightened path, 9 ways of Bön, 4 causal vehicles, 4 more transformative vehicles, and the last one, 9th one, is beyond cause and result. So it's called cause and result, which is Dzogchen tradition. So if you think about Dzogchen tradition, it's only in Tibetan Buddhism, Bön and a Nyingma tradition who contains the Dzogchen teachings. So, but also in the Bön tradition, there's a lot of very important and unique. It's something called causal tradition that is very much connected with healing, astrology, cosmology, nature, spirits, and so elemental practices, and all those things. What is so important nowadays for the environmental the understanding, the value of environment, and and also Burn tradition also have epistemology, cosmology, and all those things very similar to Buddhist tradition. So it's very rich, but very similar to the Buddhist tradition, particularly Dzogchen. But of course, as misunderstood in Tibet, there is it's been definitely suppressed and undermined, and traditions that even today, uh, it's that misunderstanding is still there today. Sometime for me, uh, living in the West most of my life, um, even though my own journey, my father was from Gelug tradition, Buddhist tradition. My mother was from Bön tradition. I was a very young age brought part of, around 10, 11, I was brought up in a Christian boarding school. And then my mom took me to the Bön monastery. So my training was from the background of Bön. So, but I clearly consider myself as a Pompo because I'm trained in that. But I clearly also not label myself with a particular identity with one single tradition. I'm trying to trying not open to all the other schools, but also world religion and science, which is something that I trying to integrate as much as possible my own life and also the teachings that I do. So, but unfortunately, sometimes I see some even Western scholars or teachers who get influenced by these prejudice, and they speak from that prejudice point of view. I laugh about it because I feel like it's very funny that it's not a Western problem, but they get trapped into it, and even they claim to be more open, more scientific, more Western, but they still get very Tibetan identity trapped. So it makes me laugh, sometimes. It makes me a little bit upset, but also more laughter. So anyway, so that's a little bit of my background.
Great. Thank you. I just have one follow-up question to that, and if you can explain a little bit about, you said something about the Dzogchen Bun tradition. Is that vastly different than the pre-introduction of Buddhism into Tibet Bun tradition? Is it like more infused with like the early translation teachings of Buddhism into? Is it kind of like a marrying of the Buddhist Dzogchen tradition, of the Nyingma Dzogchen tradition, and the Bun teachings, or is it kind of like more of the inherent nature of
So
mind
basically,
qualities?
you look at as Bön as a completely different tradition, in
Mm,
that. So I sometimes call it Bön Buddhist, because it's like in terms of the value, the teaching, the view, meditation, conduct, all the things are exactly similar. I mean, they're very, very similar. There's no major distinctions to not to call Buddhist. So I call it like as a Zen Buddhism, Burn Buddhism. But definitely in Burn tradition would um, follow, respect Buddha Shakyamuni, but Buddha Shakyamuni is not the primary Buddha in the Burn tradition. Burn tradition, Tomba Sherab Mioshe is the main Buddha. Uh, so as far as Dzogchen is concerned, as I said earlier, so not like all the other traditions, really fundamentally, the lineage of Dzogchen is not part of their lineage, only in Nyingma and Bön. But nowadays, in somehow, it's kind of more integrated, all the other schools, including even some of Gelug tradition, acknowledging and like His Holiness Dalai Lama receiving a transmission, teaching, or even teaching himself, Dzogchen teachings to others. So that part is very similar. But what is similar means the lineage is different. Uh, but the literature is different, and some vocabulary, um, the metaphors are different. For example, typical will be in Nyingma tradition will be ngowo rangjin tugje, essence, nature, and compassion. In one unique Dzogchen text in the Sharjinyeji in Bern, it's called Mother, Child, and Dynamic Energy, Ma
mm,
self. So these kind of ways in which explains things are different, but the core underlying teaching is just same.
mm. Thank you. Yeah, that's very illuminating. Thank you very much. I want to turn a little bit to talking about dream yoga, and since the publication of your book in 1998, the Tibetan Yogas of Dream and Sleep has become a real classic as the first mainstream English language book covering dream yoga from Tibetan traditions. And we have an upcoming course with you on that very subject. And so, for starters, can you tell me a bit about that subject, like what dream yoga is and what your specific approach is, and some of the material that's covered in that course?
Yeah. So so the dream yoga practice is, of course, the title of the book is Tibetan Yogas of Dream and Sleep. It's been a long time. It's published, also translated into over 25 languages. So this yoga, when people in the West, when people think about yoga, they immediately think about the physical yoga. Yoga is not only physical yoga. Yoga is insight practices. So that is, it's related with the body, related with the breath, related with the mind, and also dream and sleep. So this particular book, Tibetan Yoga of Dream and Sleep, as title suggests, it's very much the practice of night. So what causes dream? Where in the body? What relationship to the dream and sleep to our body, our energy, our emotions, our identity, deeper layers of identity? What the purpose of the dream is? How many kind of dream is there? And by cultivating lucidity in a dream, ability to understand oneself through these stories, through those symbolic meanings and messages from the dream, and trying to process them, and either within a dream while you're having a lucid dream, trying to change something in dream, or able to bring them these messages out of the dream, trying to look re-reflecting back on those dreams, processing those dreams during the daytime with the practices of purification, mantra, meditation, and so on. And then once you able to do this dream yoga practice quite well, then you are going deeper into the sleep yoga practice, which is the sources of where the dream is coming from. So it's like trying to tapping deeper in our essence, who we are, our being. So something is called clear light. So how to, not only the stories and images coming about out of the light, but what is basis of those images, which is the fundamental true, fundamental pure sense of light. What is that within us? How that can be discovered? We call it natural clear light within the through the day. We call it meditative clear light during the meditation. How we can experience that. We call it clear light of sleep. How we can discover it within a sleep in the night cycle, and then clear light of the pardo intermediate state, how we can discover in the pardo state. So basically, if you are more conscious during meditation, during awakened state, you're more likely to be conscious of the clear light in the sleep. If you are conscious of that clear light in the sleep, you're more likely to be conscious of the moment of the death in the clear light state of pardo. So basically, in a way, it is a preparation. Ultimately, it's a preparation for even dying.
Are your teachings on this subject, was this a big part of your training when you were coming up? Can you tell me a little bit about the difference between the Western concept of lucid dreaming and the your training in the Tibetan tradition of it, and what the intersections are in that?
So this is, I would not say this is particularly my main training as growing up. So this is clearly became my main part of the teaching and my main part of the practice in my life nowadays. And as far as talking about how much science and everything is involved, it is a very important part that I'm always curious about it. And I, for a number of years, so I'm basically sleep and dream freak, you know. So I'm obsessed with my sleep and dream. As I can, people laugh about when I show them. This is my 1 week sleep score. Every day is 100%. So so that I watch every single night, and every single metrics, my heart resting heart rate, my HRV heart rate variability, my skin temperature, my rate of the breath, my um, the so basically the uh, how many REM hours, how many slow wave sleep, how many awake hours, did I fulfill my need based on my strain level? So I'm very much every single day, first thing in the morning I do is to see, and if anything is needed to be changed, I change during that daytime For example, most of the time I will not eat dinner. I know clearly, like it's very predictable. It might not be predictable for everybody, but for me, it's my evening meals. It's very predictable. So later, heavier, it's more the worst dream I sleep and dream that I can have. So I watch them so clearly and change my behavior according to that.
So when in your teaching approach, like in the course that you're teaching, is it like a hybrid of the subtle mind aspects and then the physical science? It's like um, being aware of those two worlds and how they influence each other. There's a lot
Yeah,
of that.
I have changed the way I teach and where I have emphasized. I have changed since it's been there when the book was written. It was a very very long time ago, and when I was not much aware of the science. I mean, even the science is evolving things, like every year something is evolving. For example, last year, the Whoop study shows, one of the big study shows that if you practice very aggressive exercise after 4, it will affect your sleep quality. So that was never before, for example. So every year, everything is evolving more and more. So now I really um, trying to be very careful when I'm teaching the dream yoga practice. I make sure that people understand not to mess up your sleep, not to mess up your dream, because people who are over, uh, older age, over 60, 65 or something, they say um, something like 5% of reduction of your REM sleep is 13% increases of your mortality. So if you unintentionally, if you reduce your REM period, you'll die faster for sure. Or even one single night when you sleep only 4 hours, and then that not accumulated, even even that one single night reduction of your killer cells up to a 70% reduces. So it's a big deal. So I wanted to make sure, knowing all the science, I wanted to make sure that I'm trying to teach a dream yoga practice, not mess up more people's sleep than they're already messing it up. So I wanted to make sure the baseline is correct. At least I try to encourage not to mess up, and then as much as the dream yoga, ancient knowledge, and the teaching to bring it up to have cultivate lucid dream and so on.
Mm, wonderful. Thank you. So right now I'm staying on a remote island in Canada, and this morning I was driving with my partner to the town that's about 45 minutes or an hour away, and we listened to some of the guided practices that you give in the course. I wanted to familiarize myself with them a little bit before talking to you. And we were both struck by the spacious quality of them and how they feel very complete and thorough. But there's such a sense of calm and spaciousness.
Mhm.
And I wanted to ask if the guided practices are something that you developed for a Western audience, or was it also a part of your training? Because there's such a wonderful implementation for this kind of practice. So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So one thing I will clarify is that everything what I teach is 100% uncompromised to the basis on the teachings. So contents and delivery is two different things. As you know,
Yeah.
public speaker, they talk about contents and delivery, two equally important part of how you deliver the message. So content is 100% same, but the delivery definitely has changed. And I not since over 30 years, it's been changing every year, even up to this morning. Every night when I have a good night's sleep, every morning deep inside before I wake up, I wake up, I still stay half an hour on my bed, because I want every morning exposure to the light to be exposed exactly the same time. So my light exposure to my eye is 6 o'clock. So even I woke up probably around 5:30 or something like that. So I stayed there. So two insight came this morning, which I already started draft part of my book. It's called id- identity free zone. So identity free zone is during the daytime we have identity. Who we are. Identity is conditioned by our environment, what kind of terrain, climate you live, and a social circle you live, the laws that you have to abide with, religion that you follow, community that expectations, parents you have, whatever. You have to abide a lot of rules that these are causes of building your pain identity. Basically, you have identity based on these conditions. But the moment you go to sleep, you're free. You don't have to follow law. You don't have to follow environment. You don't have to follow your parents. You don't have to follow any rules. You're free. That means two kind of freedom in one night. One moment, about 50% of your night, you're free from your body. Another 50% of your night, you're free from your mind, which is in a science is called slow wave sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. So in the early part of the night, when you have a deep sleep, when you're having a deep sleep, in a way you're free from your mind, even though your mind is always connected, but mind is just gone. You will not worry about it. If you're worrying, you will not fall asleep. You will not be sleeping. But since you're not worried about things, body is free from that mind pain identity, and therefore it is restoring itself. The beauty there. So because body is free from that mind's condition, at least for a short time. And for longer you are free, more deeper you are free, your deep sleep will be longer. The lighter it is, if mind comes back, they become shorter. In the REM sleep, the opposite. So in the REM sleep, you're free from your body because body is paralyzed. As you know, like when you are dreaming, your body is paralyzed. The real logic is that if your body is paralyzed, then mind can do whatever mind wanted to do. If body is not paralyzed, then mind can act out through the body and can be dangerous. So universe has designed a body to be paralyzed. So that means mind. This is the process, emotional process, cognitive process, right? So mind can go crazy. Imagination, it can even the sense of self. You can become a male, female, animal, bird, elements. You can become anything or anybody, and you can do anything. Like you can run like a greyhound dog, fly like an eagle. You can listen like a dolphin. Your sense, you can do anything. You can experience something that you can never ever imagine able to experience through this biological body. But mind can do it. So those are because mind is free from the body. So you have a identity free from your body, identity free from your mind. Those free identity zone in one night. About half of, you know, maybe more than half. As I said, maybe 50, um, 60, 70%. I don't know, maybe 50% RAM or 50% deep or something like that. So anyway, so these are like again these are new language. I never
Mm.
thought about it before. I have never heard anybody else speaking that before. Even I asked ChatGPT, is this concept idea, does it anybody ever have said anything about it? I've never heard. So, but I wanted to, this is, it's the same thing what I deliver, but it's a different storytelling, but
Mm.
finding with the science.
Hmm. So yeah, so it's like finding new ways, different modalities to work with the same teachings and different skillful
Yeah.
means to work with the same
Yes,
teachings, right?
delivery,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah,
delivery
yeah.
is the language.
Mm. Wonderful.
And I do feel like sometimes I do feel it's not something that I have learned or I have put so much effort, but it's something very natural part of me that I feel like I have maybe I have a Tibetan body, but somehow maybe very Western mind.
Uh-huh.
inside who is never satisfied with the one single answer. So it's like
Mm.
I always used to complain about Western people saying, "You guys never stop asking why." Now I feel like that those Western identity in me always asking why, and especially lately, I'm saying we always have to ask something different. You cannot ask the same question. If you're asking the same question, you're not growing. That's a sign, clear sign you're not growing. If your questions are not evolving, getting better and deeper, you're not growing. That's a sign of you're not growing. So even the intention to ask anything, even in as simple as a life, how I can be happier, then more different reason than reason that I'm conditioned why. You'll be happier sooner.
Mm. This is beautiful to hear about. And I'd like to turn now a little bit and change the trajectory of the conversation to, we call this podcast This Very Moment. And the idea is that we learn about the causes and conditions who have made you who you are at this very moment. And so I'd like to ask some questions about your childhood in India, the environment of your household growing up before you left to go to the monastery and school as an 11-year-old. What can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and parents?
Yeah. So again, as far as my childhood is concerned, I think it's definitely. And when I look back, a lot of time it's challenging. Uh, Not enough close connection with parents, or not enough immediate guidance. Um, so difficult. Uh, and that difficulty that I have faced, I never regret. I think I feel blessed that I faced difficulty. I was just talking with my wife and another friend today, talking about raising children. I said if our son just turned, he will be turning 21 in November, in October. So I was saying that if I have another baby, which I will not, but I will raise it differently than I did him. Basically, I will let him suffer more. Yeah, because I think the healthy suffering, protective suffering, is the best way to bring up child. And one thing, what we problem in the West is children are growing up with abandon. I say abandon. I say abundance, abundant resources, abundant love, more love than you need, more care than you need, more guidance than you need, more food than you need. So everything is more than you need, and that's not a healthy thing. People should not be given that much, because it doesn't exercises you, it doesn't allow your strengths to come out. So in the same way, when I look back my childhood, I did not get what my child got it from us, and I do not complain about my parents. I'm always grateful, and but what I did not receive from them was a blessing. I'm happy that I did not get enough love. I'm happy that I did not get enough guidance. I'm happy that all the things that I did not got from them, I'm blessed that I did not get from them. Not intentionally, they did not give me, but the circum universe universe protected me, getting too much protection, too much guidance, too much love, too much of anything. Therefore, universe helped me to become who I am today, a strong, resilient, able to look for what I need, fight for what I need. And those qualities is something that I have learned by not having. If I had a lot of things what I do like kids today, I think I might not be the same person.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much to suffering that creates a resiliency and a dedication in life. I often think about like the teachings of Pater Rinpoche and how he always says like how much of a blessing it is not to have certain things or to experience certain hardships. And yeah, it's
Absolutely.
really true. Like when you meet the people that I admire the most are always people who've suffered deeply,
Yeah.
and it creates beautiful qualities. Of course,
Yeah.
it's difficult, especially as a parent. it's
Yes.
difficult to.
No, like I think when he was our Singh was around 12, 13, we sent him Dharamsala for almost 2 years in a almost semi-orphanage school as a boarding school. So it was not easy to send, but I think that's one of the best experience he had in his life. So I think it's this is that not only that my upbringing, but I think another part of my upbringing, it's because I see sometimes people who have suffered a lot childhood trauma, but then they don't have that kind of similar spiritual training or background or support the wonderful teachers that we have. So then sometimes those pain can turn out to be very destructive, also very defensive. I mean, nowadays you look at the politicians, so you can see sometimes they are trying to these deep wounded become as a global issues. Because they have it made them strong, it made them rich, but it did not make them clear and and, uh, and more compassionate. And so then I think the later part of my life, growing up in the monastery, in an environment like that, it just kind of balanced my suffering into a more
Yeah.
guided and compassionate way. Because,
Mhm.
for example, one simple thing will be, a practical example could be that, you know, we were never asked what you wanted to become when you grow up. Those questions or those psychologically, I never had it even even in my late 20s or early 30s. I did not. I did not know what the hell I'm going to become, whatever it is, the life, whatever the life brought in front of me, I only knew to trying to make best use of everything I am exposed in that given moment in my life, not go too far away from my life, or not to go back too backward from my life. Try to be more in the moment and just listen to to the moment and trying to tap into what the universe has prepared for me, rather than my pain and fear is prepared for me.
Mm. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And you started to talk a little bit about the training in your monastery that like gave you the tools, so to speak, to turn your suffering into spiritual richness. And I'd love to hear some stories about your training under Lopon Sangye Tenzin Rinpoche and others. Just if you have any stories about your time with your teachers that stand out in your memory that you think about from time to time that really made a big impact on
Yeah.
you?
So my mainly I consider as my teacher, Lobe Tenzin, who I received many of Dzogchen teaching. Um, so more like a teachings than really like a person to person transmission, because I did not grow up with him. In fact, he was very tough person teacher, so I did not want to do live with him or grow close that close, because as a teenager I was very, how you say, very mobility. I can move fast and can do things. I can cook. As a teenage, sometimes I made cook for 30 people or something like that, and I can make a very good chapati roti. And I realized that he likes my bread, and he said, "Oh, you should stay downstairs myself." And so I say, "No, thank you." Did not want to close, receive teaching, but not that close. On
Mm.
the other hand, I've been close living together with Yongdzin Tenzin Namdak, Yongdzin Lopon, who passed away last year. So in the same house, living in the same house most of my adult life until I was 27, who was totally different personality, very gentle, compassionate, understanding. He would never, hardly ever tell you what not to do or to do something. Y- You know, maybe one or two times he might have showed a little bit unhappy face, like I was saying, kind of little bit disappointed, okay, a little upset or something. Just expression, not enough to make me feel afraid. Enough, I know he's not happy. Enough to know that he's not happy, enough to know that I have to be a little bit more careful what I do, but never too much to feel fear or resist or blocking my potentiality. Never. So, growing up with that kind of relationship with my teacher, last over 50 years of relationship until he passed away, I look at that as my greatest blessing in my life. I even tell people sometimes Western student people would they follow one teacher and then very often they will praise another teacher. And instead of learning how to praise your own teacher that you follow, they're trying to praise somebody else. I, sometimes I hear that, and I wrote a post. I said you can only call a good relationship with a teacher or anybody, your partner, wife, brother, when you have a relationship. You cannot call a good relationship when you don't have a relationship. You're supposed to have a relationship. That's not called a good relationship, because you have to have know every aspect of the person. You not need to know human aspect of the person. You need to see that person upset. The person is little angry or something like that. You need and then build a relationship on a genuine sense of relationship, and then that's called good relationship, right? So I feel very blessed and lucky to have that uh, relationship with my teacher, and who passed away. Whenever somebody passed away, then that relationship can never go bad because it's completed full journey.
Yeah. Can you share any particular stories about circumstances that stand out in your mind, like whether it's funny or scolding or anything that, when I think about my Lama, and there's like, of course, there's like the general feeling and there's so many memories, but there's a few like specific circumstances or things that I replay in my mind over and over again. Do you have any just a story of a particular circumstance with one of your lamas that stands out in your memory?
Yeah. So one thing, like with the Yongdzin Lopon story, as I said earlier, that he would never really tell you what to do or what not to do much. And even sometimes things you will do things that he don't want you to do. One of the things that we as growing up in my time when we were growing up in the monastery, monks supposed to not go to Indian movies,
Hmm.
and we love Indian movies, right? That's the only entertainment. Nobody has a phone, nobody has even radio, TV, nothing. So only thing you do is maybe once a month you sneak out and watch a movie, Indian movie, and whenever you watch it, do it, you cannot lie about it, because you know how many time to get there. It takes basically watch one movie takes whole day, and you in the winter it's when you come back it's a night. So whenever I come back, I would, I would open his little curtain, and he will be. You can see he's not happy. Then I will just smile a little bit. I will leave it, and then I'll go in my room and go to sleep and come back next day. And next morning it's fine. Everything is back normal. And then maybe in a few days' time, we used to walk a lot. And during walk, I will tell the story about the movie. And I was a good storyteller, and he was a good listener. So I would tell. We will walk for 2 hours or something. Then I would tell the whole movie, but I will not tell this story where it's coming from. He would not ask. I will not tell. Then and then the movie finishes, and he said, "What happened to that character?" I said, "Then the movie is finished."
Oh.
He will be a little bit upset, and he will laugh. But something that he was not happy about to me watching the movie, but he wanted to know how the movie ends.
You enjoyed the stories. Oh, that's
Yeah.
sweet. I'm curious if there's been, or if you can share a little bit about any non-traditional influences outside of your prolific teachers, like any any books or movies or individuals who have really captured your attention and kind of been instrumental in how you see and interact with the world. Just anything that's outside of the tradition.
So Well, I trying to listen a lot of science, uh, and particularly a lot of things related with health. And so, I would not say one particular person been super influential, but there are many people for many different things. Like I don't know if you know David Sinclair, who's a Harvard professor, somebody who wrote a called Lifespan book. And it- it- what is interesting for me is something that I've been, growing up in a traditional uh, um, monastery settings, what we call Tibetan word called solji. Solji means following the tradition. We grow up very strong sense of that tradition, which is I value a lot. I'm not saying I don't value it. I value a lot, but sometime to the point when that mindset kind of blocks your ability to explore more than what tradition is saying, then I feel it's blocking me. Then trying to seek something more, as I'm saying, asking better questions or deeper questions, or not trying to ask the same question. When you're in the monastery, when you're learning epistemology, debate and things like that, usually it's the same question you're asking all the time. Throughout the centuries, all the monks and geshes ask the same question. Even the answers are the same, some same answers. There might be slightly variation differences, but you're almost like memorizing the same question and same answer. And I feel like which is great. I'm not saying it's not a good way of learning, but I feel sometimes it's good to allow trying to break through those boundaries. So, like David Sinclair, I don't know if you know that one of the things they talk about is reversing age. I mean, they have done with the mouse, they have done with the monkeys, they have mouse who have lost their eyesight completely. They brought back the eyesight with the gene, with the genes and things like that. So somehow, just thinking about that kind of something which you never think about, idea about not dying, for example. I'm not saying not dying is good or bad. It's immediately people think, oh, not dying, that's not good. I'm not talking about good or bad. I'm talking about that these questions, or even some people who die faster, they don't ask this question. They don't say, can I be healthier now? I'm 65. I can clearly say I'm much more healthier than when I was 40. So I have to ask this question: can I be healthier? Can my heart can be better than when I was a 40? Yeah, of course, yes. Answer is simple. But then how? Then I have to find out how. Then I have to live in a lifestyle, and I have to not only learn how to live in a new lifestyle, but I have to enjoy my new lifestyle, which I do. So David Sinclair is one, and I don't know if you guys know a good guy called Brian Johnson, who who also is one of the tech guy who uh, what people say different things about him, but one thing I like about him, he is very disciplined. So he would one thing you will say is like he would eat around 7 8 in the morning, and the last meal will be 11:30, and that's it until next morning, and goes to bed same time as I do, 8:30, and every day same time. So disciplined people who are very disciplined and who measures everything in their biological biomarkers. Everything is measured. I like those things. I'm very unlike the very Tibetan teachers. This morning, Inside Tracker. I don't know if you know Inside Tracker. There's a company called Inside Tracker. They just came in this morning in my home. They took my blood. In November, I did blood work, 51 biomarkers. So in between November to now, I did few different therapeutic things, like something called hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I'm not sure you know or not. So I've done that for 50 sessions. So I wanted to see if it's any different. For example, so these are influenced by like these people who are professors, scientists, very health freak, like believing they will not die. It's not that it's not like I don't think about not dying. In fact, very opposite. I practice impermanence, mortality every single day, remind myself every single day, help people die every single day, students. But you have to, only way to live really fully is when you live closest to your death. But you don't have to kill yourself. What I believe is sometimes when I see people, they are slowly killing themselves with the ignorance and fear because they don't want you to know what's going on.
That's fascinating. I wonder if we can turn next to we've kind of covered bits of your life from childhood and through your training. Can you talk a little bit about the stage in your life when you finished your traditional training? Of course, we're forever students and always learning, but when your life turned to one of a student to one of a teacher, and what that time in your life was like.
So basically, I began to teach when I was around 18, 19 years old. While in the monastery, one of the earliest student who began to teach, uh, supporting my teacher, not because I was a good teacher, because they don't have anybody better than me. So asked me to do. So I began to teach the epistemology, poetry, and things like that. But I finished my graduation when I was 26 in 1986. I finished one of the youngest geshe, and so after that, then I start to work, and then I start to come to the West, and then I start to, trying to do some. Was interested to do my PhD, but then I gave it up, and I felt like the academic circles in the university, politics and things like that. I said I don't need that. I can be better than just professor. I can be much more fun, more exploring, not politic things like that. So I just began to do my own things. So yeah, so first time we started our Lingmichi Institute was in 92, I think. Yeah.
At what point did you come to the West and start teaching in the West?
I came, I finished Geshe degree in 1986, and rest in March, and the rest of the 86 I went to Tibet with my teacher. So that was first time he actually ever left monastery after first time when he began our first group. And then when we came back from Tibet in 80 end of 86, then 87 I began work 1 year in Dharamsala library, cataloging all the burn texts in the library. I published a book, big catalog, all the book published by Dharamsala. So end of that year, I think that was in 1987 December or something. I came the invitation of Namkhen Nobu Rinpoche and Dzogchen community. I came to the Italy, and since then, end of 86, so basically beginning of 89, I've been in the West most of
Wow.
my life. Yeah.
So the better part of the last 40 years, you've been
Yes.
living and
So
teaching in the West.
I've been now more time in the West.
Mm.
So before I used to dream during the daytime. I'm in the West. In the night, I go back. Now I'm not sure. My consciousness and body seems like more in the West, both together.
Mm.
Took long time for my mind to come to join my body.
Mm. Okay. And then so like the name, as I mentioned, the name of this podcast is This Very Moment. And so now, with almost 40 years of living and teaching in the West, you've talked a little bit about um your approach and the specifics of your practices and teachings at this point in time. But is there something in your practice that you find particularly poignant? I was talking to Tubu Tunda Rinpoche toward the end of his life, and he was telling me that as he aged, he had done so many elaborate practices and so many things, and as he got older and as he really settled into his being, he really simplified his practice. And I've just been asking everyone if there's like something as you mature as a human and as you've internalize all these teachings and practices, is there something that's really the focal point of your practice these days?
I think probably in essence, I might not say anything different than Trulku Thundup. And so for me, uh, so it's not, hopefully it's not my last part of my life, but I have already started this journey a long time before, even from now. So as you can see, almost all of my books, the core address is the same thing. Nothing changes, and I'm always talking. It's always talking from a different point of view, but the core message is the abiding in understanding your true self, abiding in the nature of mind, and integrating that in every new circumstances comes up in life. Either you are student or you are teacher, you are father, you are husband, you are friend, you are sick person, you are dying person, you are sleeping person. No matter what you are, what new circumstances you are facing, you always remember the same thing: be yourself, and from that space, find your best quality, whatever that moment needs it, to help yourself and others. And that's the core thing. And that's the true core thing because my teacher, when he passed away last year, I always tell my students, it's important to remember, see, he lived over 100 years. And when he passed away, he said few words to his attendees. He said, please do not worry about me. I have no regret and I have no physical pain. And I am inseparable with nature of mind, self-arising wisdom. In Tibetan, we say Rangjung Ishe. I am inseparable with the Rangjung Ishe. And so just don't worry about me. And he would do a invocation of Tabriza, one prayer that he knows. That prayer is the way to enter in. For him, he used to that prayer for a very long time. So it's way of entering that. He would do that prayer and then he would be in the silence. And that's it. He is one of the most knowledgeable person you can think. His interest was so wide from the birds to plants to rocks, stones to cultural to music to rituals to astrology, cosmology, all the yanas, path, very wide range of interests. And he taught everything. He wrote so many things, but this is where he rests. And I feel this is a one thing for sure. I don't want to start my last days of my life. I wanted to start now, and I've already started a long time ago, and I will go more deeper into it. And that's only what I teach. Also, I teach. I don't only sometimes I teach different thing. People ask me to, but I always in the end of that teaching, I will always turn back to. We will start in something where people wanted to ask me, but I go take back to the same
Mm,
place.
mm. That's so precious. Thank you for sharing that. I guess as a way of ending this particular interview, is there anything that you have going on right now? Something you'd like to share, a project or an activity that you're involved in that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things going on, So one social work, I'm helping a group of friends to establish. They have established already a non-profit foundation called Quinzang Foundation, which is non-religious and non-political social organization that I'm trying to help children, women, and skill trainings, jobs, and things like that. And so in Nepal, so that's one thing. And another thing is I'm working on a few book projects. In fact, one book on pain identity, a book that that it's quite 80-90% is done, and another book on light, the light in terms of the what we in Dzogchen we call Togal practices, 5 pure lights, the sound, light, and rays, visions that you will see in sleep, Pardo, and then trying to compare that with the science notion of light, any connections and things like that. So, I don't know. These are all fun things. One thing I really, really enjoy my day engaging most in doing these things, more deeper, contemplative, reflective work. And but I also, want to do, because when you do that, it takes a load on your brain. So I want to make sure that my brain is resting enough. So learning a new sport. I'm learning a golf, and something that my son and we this last couple of weeks we have been going almost every other day to play together, practice together. So something that I realized that one thing we can share is something like golf, more time together. So yeah, these are fun. These are all nothing serious. They're all fun part of dynamic energy of the nature of mind.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing bits of wisdom and bits of your story. It's really precious to hear. Thank you for joining for this
Thank,
Rinpoche. Thank
thank
you.
you.